Hi everybody, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be showing you some ideas and inspiration around how to use alcohol inks and turn them into cards. So let's go ahead and get started. So over the last couple of weeks I had been making some alcohol ink backgrounds and finally decided to put something together and show you some ideas about how to turn them into cards. A couple of the cards are pearl inks and the other ones are just Ranger alcohol inks. So first I'm going to use this blue one here, and I'm going to take a regular A2 card. So it's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and I'm going to use this background, which is about the same size, it's a little bit bigger, and trim it down. And I'm cutting it in half where the sediment's going to sit in the center, and that's the example that I'm using there on the left. So the top portion of this is a 3 by 4, and then the bottom is 1 1/2 by 4 inches long. And you can use whatever works for you. That's just kind of what worked for me when I started looking at how to incorporate the sediment in the center. I am going to also share with you that when I put the sediment in on a couple, well, it was an example that I had previously done, and I'll show it in here. It's not the one that I'm using as the example in this case, but it's one of my pearl backgrounds. I had laid down the alcohol inks first on the card, so I placed them and then I stamped, and I thought it'd be great to emboss. And as you probably know, and if you don't, I had forgotten how fast Yupo paper can melt. And unfortunately what happened is it took longer to emboss, and the Yupo paper with the alcohol inks on it started to warp. So I did a fix on it. I still liked it the way it was, but I'll show you this at the end of this video. So basically here I am using StazOn ink. I think it's one of the best inks for stamping sediments, and I did not glue down the alcohol ink, the Yupo paper. I just put it where it's going to go, but put the ink down. Now there's a couple reasons for that. One, if I messed up on the ink, I could easily just pick another cardstock and make the card again, versus having to peel away and peel off the alcohol ink paper. So pretty easy. I just used my stamping tool here, and I only needed to do it once. Now StazOn does stain your stamps, so if that freaks you out a little bit, you can use some StazOn ink remover and it will remove it for you. Otherwise the ink on there will not ruin the stamp. You can still use it. It just will be the color of the ink, in this case black. Now to give it some dimension, I am putting some foam tape on here. This is a 1/4 inch long, just to give it a little bit of lift on the card. And so you see me doing that here. Now, the difficult part, sometimes, I don't know, I have such a hard time placing things straight on a card. I don't know why. I know that there's probably tools out there that I could use to do that, and I guess I'm just stubborn, thinking I can do it. But what happens with the tape, the cool thing is, like, it's on there. Once it sticks, it is on there. The downside is you don't have the wiggle room you do with glue to straighten things out. So the best advice I can offer is to go in with it just lightly on top before you really press it down, because once it's pressed down, it's not going anywhere. You're not getting it up. You will rip the card. So I go in and just do my best, and they actually turn out pretty straight. I'm surprised. I just use the corners as a guide, but sometimes they get off-centered. And the other thing you want to be careful on here is that maybe it doesn't matter to you, but I wanted the inks to line up, even though I cut them and separated them. I wanted to make sure that when I laid them down that they were facing the right way, as if they were still together. And so you may have seen me do that earlier on in the video, but it's one thing that I wanted to make sure that happened. Again, if it was upside down, I don't think anybody would probably notice the difference. It was just me and my preference. So everything's put together here. You could leave it just as it is, or what I'm going to do is add in a strip. It's gold paper, and it just adds an extra accent for me, which I thought was pretty cool. It's actually one of the tricks I'd mentioned. I had the Yupo paper start to melt. It was actually one of the tricks I used when I had to repair that card. So I liked it so much I thought I'd put it on this card as well. And so you see me doing that here. The card up at the top, it says Warm Thoughts. That is actually Pearl alcohol ink by Ranger. The one that I'm working on is just the regular alcohol inks, and I use just some greens and blues and pool colors in that one. So I added, one of the things I did when I learned about how to add the strip on the best way, I had first started in my other cards by putting the glue, which is what I'm using to adhere it, on the strip. And it's pretty thin. I intentionally did it that way. But what I found is it had too much glue on it. You don't need a whole lot. And so I found it easier to put it on the Yupo paper and then just apply the strip over top of it and then cut off at the end. So that's what you see me doing here. So this is card 2 that I'm going to show you, and it was based on this one that I had done. It was pretty simple. I don't wind up cutting the Yupo paper other than down to the size of, to fit in the card, and then added a sediment on it. So it's pretty easy. I felt like with the original one I did up in the left corner there, I really was inspired by this when I was trying to create like a sunset in here, and so I thought, let's just keep it simple. I thought I'd do the same since they were very similar colors on this. So I wind up cutting this down to a 5 by 3 3/4 size, and I like the way it looked with the white around the border. It's a little bit more of a border than I had on the original one. But then I decided it may need something, so why not use the gold cardstock again? And so that's what I wound up doing. I like this one because it's not glossy, it's this matte look. And I wind up cutting it to 5 1/4 by 4 inches. And that way it just adds a little something, a little dimension and visual appearance in the background. So I go ahead and do that, and I will assemble it. So like the original card, I'm going to use just some white heavy cardstock. This one is the Nina Solar White. It's 80 pounds. And I am using the sediment here by Honeybee. And I'll include the links below if I'm able to find them. But I like it just because they're pretty easy to read and they're very straight across. And so I wind up actually adding 2 of the sediments. So it's a little bit thicker than the original one. And you'll see as I'm, lining these up, one of the things I did not do is pay attention to the bottom sediment. You know, once you peel them off, they're kind of hard to read. You got to really pay attention. So what you're seeing is here, I tried to stamp it once. One went one direction, the thank you, and the other piece of it went the other way. So one was upside down. So I used the same cardstock and just stamped again on it, making sure that I had all the lettering facing the right way. And then I go ahead and give it a quick trim down and think that I need something, and you can see I tried it one more time and I pressed too hard on the grate. That's the thing about sediments. Like if you press too hard, they become blurry and they're not right. So the third time was the charm. I decide this needs a little bit more on the background, and I add in some of the gold cardstock again, just around the border. The white just seemed too stark in comparison to the color that the alcohol inks left on the Yupo paper. It was just so pretty, and I think this just balanced it out enough. So I didn't want to cover up too much of the image, but I, really liked how this turned out. Again, I'm using the foam to give it some lift because I glued the design in the gold background directly onto the card. So this will be just a little bit setting the sediment apart from the rest of the card so it's not so flat. And that's it. Hopefully you've liked this, and if you are interested, I'll be doing other videos like this. You want to make sure that you subscribe and hit the alert button so you know that those are coming. And I'm also going to show you what other cards I did. You won't see me put them together, but it's the same concept. So here's just a few of those cards. I added on here some dots to give it some additional color in there too. You saw that. So I hope you've enjoyed this. If you do, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. I really appreciate it. And let me know your thoughts below. What kind of cards have you done? What other ideas do you have about how to use the alcohol inks? I love the pearls and I love the regular ones. So I've really enjoyed this, and hopefully you did too. Thanks so much.